Yeah. We're muted again. City Pigeons, episode 86. I am thrilled to be here tonight. I'm Jesse Rendell.
The Fred Barnett episode.
I'm here with my typical cast of characters. We got Mike Meach, Eric Fink, Tom Henneman, Mark Goodhart. Let's go around the video horn. And the man that's next to me, none other than Spike Eskin himself. Spike, thank you. This has been a long time.
Welcome.
It's been a long time coming. And I have to give you a lot of credit because now you're doing a 4-hour-a-day radio show. You're doing a weekly podcast.
Bi-weekly.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. When I reached out to you to ask if you would do this, you basically said absolutely right from the start. So I got to give you a lot of credit. You're a real one in my book.
Oh, thank you.
And
glad to be here.
You want to talk more sports, right?
Yes. I said before I left the radio station, I'm doing this podcast tonight, and if we could just talk sports the entire fucking time, specifically the same, if we could just talk about Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni for the first 45 minutes, so that would be I'd be thrilled.
I think when we have in-house guests, we need we need them to come from backstage. We need theme music, and we need to introduce them properly like that, instead of just cutting to the camera and have them here.
Right. It's always a little weird because I want to introduce him right off the bat, but I got to go around to everybody else and then come back to him. So you got a point. Maybe we should be like, and here is
They could pick their own theme song, like a batter's walk-up music.
Yeah. Does anybody here play? Well, you play instruments.
Yes,
why can't you play them in?
Wooly.
Well, you know what? So we did just hear the intro music, which I told you was a bass line that I used to play back in the day, and we recorded it with the singer who was in my band. But I want to play it live a couple times, you know what I mean, and do a live intro. So, but if you wanted to come into like Limp Bizkit or something, I could do that.
I would love that too.
I know you're a fan. And interesting story, I was hanging out with some friends from college the other day, and some guys I didn't know, and I had like a Phillies hat on, and the guy said I look like Fred Durst. Do you believe that?
That's a
no. We don't believe that.
You don't believe that? What can I say? I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, you need is to be a white guy with a red hat. I think.
That's right. Well, this was
I think Fred Durst has a cooler look now than he did back then with his
the big gray beard.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool older guy look.
Makes me happy that they have a revival. I love them.
I saw the crowd from their last performance.
It's crazy.
It was insane.
Yeah,
it was bigger than it was in the 90s.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah.
I don't know what made you want to do this, but we appreciate you. Really
come
do.
on.
Me and Spike go back a long time.
Me and Meech go back a while. You're here. Fucking Tom and my fucking opportunity to face my Twitter guy over here. That was honestly the primary reason.
So
I'm sure you have many worse Twitter nemesis than
honestly, I gotta say, this isn't the first time this happened. We had on Mike Missinelli a while back.
Oh, okay.
And somebody brought up an old Fink tweet on Twitter, and Mike texted me. He's like, "Who the hell is this Fink guy?" You know what I realized?
That one was like about kissing him. That one's a little. I was just trying to throw Mike off a little.
Yeah, that was a little different. I'm not even going to mention some of the things you said on your tweets.
Yeah,
so I realize what I have to do, though, is I have to reach out to every person that we're going to have on and explain to them there's this many people involved and who they all are, in case there's any skeletons in the closet that we got to get out. Because I felt kind of bad. I didn't want you to think you were coming in here to, face off.
I don't care.
Yeah,
I don't care.
Do you want me to be honest with you?
Yeah.
After I saw your Fink tweet, I did a search in my Twitter, Spike from Meech One, just to see if we've been friends since I've been on Twitter, so I never said a bad word about it. Actually, I did see a couple, but they were like very sarcastic when I was obviously defending.
Are you being sarcastic though? Let's bring them up.
No, it was obviously sarcastic.
Jeff McDev says, Spike, you need to get Fink's ass now.
Well, see, he was the one that inspired it. I actually, when he
that WWE background.
Yeah, McDevitt
like stirring shit up.
Yeah, tweeted at me. He's like, you gotta, what did he say? You expose Fink or something. And then
expose Fink's ass.
Yeah, and then I thought to myself, I was like, wait a minute, I think there's some old tweets here. So I did the same thing. I did the search. I was like, I knew there were fucking old tweets.
I didn't search and delete them before that. Don't delete tweets.
From now on, as soon as a guest is announced, Fink's gonna go.
Go search.
I thought I would have been doing that by now. No, so Spike
you know what's funny? But by the way, just to mention about that, so I used to I did this thing for like 2 or 3 years where I would just tweet at Bill Simmons all the time. And I'm like a Bill Simmons, like OG. Like I wouldn't do what I do now. I'd work in radio, but I wouldn't have a podcast if it wasn't for Simmons, all that kind of stuff. But it was especially during the process time, I would tweet at him all the time because it would always get traction when I would tweet something shitty about him. Not like you should die or anything,
right.
but whatever it was. And then
just to stir a little shit.
Yeah. And then as time went on, and some people doing that to me, is like the best way to get traction online is to go at somebody who has some sort of audience that kind of feels good. Yeah. And I actually, not that Bill Simmons ever saw it, but I kind of feel shitty about it now. Yeah.
I'm honestly I'm a little bit scared to do that, and maybe it'd be a good exercise for me is just pick somebody and just go
at
wild and just see how I do. You know what I mean? Because
I think I should pick Dove Kleiman and do that because I legitimately despise that. It's not even a guy; it's like an AI character.
He has me blocked.
Does he really?
Yeah, when I was working in New York, they started talking about him on the morning show on WFAN. And about like who he was or whatever. And then the guy from the New York Post, Ryan, wrote a whole article about who he is. And after that whole thing, I looked and I saw.
Well, I don't know if you heard. I think since then he sold his account and it's someone entirely different.
Oh, so it's not him.
It's not him anymore. It's but it's still.
I feel bad. I don't know who this is.
It's an NFL Twitter guy that basically just aggregates other stories. Yeah.
Aggregator.
Yeah.
Got it. Classic.
But he barely gives credit to anyone. You know, it's if he does, it's very small and no links or anything.
You guys all
hate more him or Michael Rubin.
Well, listen.
Do you have a problem, Michael Rubin?
Wait, I just don't like his company. I have no problem with him. I think Fanatics ruined sporting goods, and that was one of my favorite things in life.
Well, the good thing is that literally every single team in every sport uses them.
Yeah, that's
what's
the problem.
Good for you. Yep.
No.
He has rage issues when it comes to Michael Rubin, and I'm just waiting for the day when we can somehow.
I'm cool.
I feel like Spike, between you and
Go
me,
for it, Mike.
Maybe there's a chance we could like get him in here. You know what I mean? Like
Michael Rubin?
Yeah, like
he would do it.
We pull the right strings and get him to surprise us.
I think he would do it.
Did you ever see that Fanatic Sucks account?
Mm-mm.
He blocked it, and then the dude called him out, and he actually like tried to get in contact with this guy. He's a very outgoing guy. I know he probably means well, but
the company's too big.
Yeah, it's just way too big.
Yeah, there's no way. I don't think they could have the sort of quality they need to covering literally every team all the time.
And they don't even attempt to put out enough merchandise to appease the public,
pay more.
which is what really bothers me.
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you guys the story when I was standing courtside last year at the Sixers Mavericks game, and a random fan came up to me and goes, "Mr. Rubin, it's so nice to meet you. What an honor." And I was like, I played it all wrong. I was like, it's not me, man. I know. I played it terribly wrong. It caught me so off guard, but I was standing like courtside in the seats where he kind of sits down at that end before the game. And the guy came up to me and
Did he never see Mike Rubin before?
I mean, probably.
Okay. I mean,
I was going to say the person has to be a huge jackass. I mean, there's not even a resemblance. Did you have a hat on at least?
I think maybe I did.
I was going to say.
I could buy it with a hat on.
Yeah. Who knows?
That's the difference.
You
could be Fred to put a red hat on. Be Fred Durst.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although you kind of have to be like chubby cheeks, a little wider. You know what I mean? I do that well. And speaking of which, Spike, you and I have known each other for a long time now. We started running into each other on kind of the Philly event circuit many years ago. And then when I was working for some talent, we used to do contracts together. And I have to say, I worked with Andy Bloom. You know, a couple other people, and Spike always was legit. Like I never felt like he was screwing me. You know how some guys would just you try to get more. In your case, you know, get less to get less. If I was negotiating for a client, you were always awesome to work with, and so I always felt like I knew you were a good guy. And then, you know, we've worked on a couple things related to our Make the World Better, and it's been great. And I appreciate you. But I realized as I was thinking about this, you know, we have a very common background in that
the dad thing.
And I thought we could have like a therapy session here, like what it's like to grow up in Philadelphia with your father being, you know, very visible. Now, I think I was lucky. I mean, my dad was a politician, but somehow, some way he became like widely loved. Right. So there wasn't as much negative. Your dad, I think, like any good media personality, was a little of both. It must have been difficult.
A little of both is a pretty kind way to put it.
Very fair.
And it's also, by the way, like, it's not like you became mayor or governor. Like I did the moronic thing of leaning right into it. I tried to avoid it.
I very much wanted to get into this with you because Interestingly, we both got into music and kind of the same kind of music. I was in the punk band, and Spike got really into a lot of that. Big Brand New guy, right?
I am.
Brand New, great band. Check them out. So for me, when I got into this band and like went on tour, and like it was like a total deviation, and I had the opportunity, obviously anyone who's the son of a politician, if you play your cards right, you know, especially with Ed Rendell being my father, right, it would have been pretty easy to walk into that, but I didn't want to. I just didn't feel compelled at all. And you went into radio, but then you went into rock radio, right? And at the time, your dad had been doing the sports thing for a while by then, right? So for you, was that like going into the same kind of, did it feel like going the same career path, or did it feel kind of separate?
No, it felt totally.
Don't read Oath Mode's comment, please.
Wait, I want to see.
Horrible.
Hold on, the beef is simmering.
No, the one on the screen.
Oh, you tell.
That's
no comment there. Yeah. The oh no, it felt totally different. I mean, I think what happened was I went to college and
Cuse.
Well, first I went to USC, and then I transferred after my freshman year to Syracuse, and I went to the student radio station, and I actually tried to do sports, and I hated everybody who did sports at the student radio station.
Very douchey.
Especially at Syracuse. They're all like the same sort of guy, and I thought they all like sports too.
Bayheim sycophants.
Yeah, too much. Like they cared too much, and they're all Red Sox fans and Yankee fans or whatever. So but I like doing the radio, but when I did music, it did not feel like the same thing. And I also, even though I guess it was in retrospect, I even in the beginning of my career, until I worked in sports, I did not use a last name at all. My business cards did not have a last name on them. It was just Spike. That was like, I guess, my way of pretending that I wasn't doing the exact same thing. And it wasn't until YSP went off the air and I didn't have a job. And I was also kind of bored by music radio at that point that I decided to do this. And then I ended up managing, and I didn't think I'd ever be back on the air again, to be quite honest with you. So no, it never felt like the same thing. It doesn't even, to be quite, it doesn't really feel like the same thing now. Well, even though it is, it doesn't feel like it.
It's probably because you spend so much time in the industry, you feel like you're completely standing on your own 2 feet at this point. You know what I mean? It's a totally different experience. But I will say, one thing that I think a lot of people have enjoyed about hearing you on the air so far is you clearly, the apple didn't fall too far from the tree, because your willingness to just, you know, kind of cut people down. And I don't want to say like cut them down, but like, you know, when someone calls and just says something.
The first comment tonight was, how did you not have Wilt on your Mount Rushmore? He was just at 8:07, he was just waiting for that one.
Only played 4 years for the Sixers. Only 4 years. That's how I didn't have him on there. The Warriors are not the Sixers. I
love that. I love that. You don't call people a dope or a genius, but like, well, I like when people get called out for saying stupid things. Everyone who's listening is thinking like, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a balance. It's obviously in my
blood,
like blood. There's like a part of that is me, but I think there's no way I could have managed for as long as I think like being a manager for a long time was a good way of learning how to sort of deal with other people in a way that you don't when you're a host. So I'm pretty different than him in a lot of ways. Obviously I'm the same in a lot. I think the show's probably goofier and more fun. And just as a comparison, like when my dad worked with Ike, they almost murdered each other every single day. Whereas I'm working with him and we're cool, but it's
early.
There is that part of me that the temperature goes up very quickly. I'm sure people will figure out what the trigger words are and how to do it. There are some people who I think do it accidentally. Fritz does it on purpose all the time. So yeah, it's in there somewhere.
Now, let me ask both of you a question before we get too far away from the dad talk.
Mm-hmm.
How mad do you guys get when you hear other people, either like without them knowing you're in the room, or if it's in public, talk shit about your dad? Like they don't, it's a certain thing. Does it really anger? Because I know if I heard people talk shit about my dad, I'd flip the fuck out. And he was never on the radio or.
I'm pretty used to it. I remember I used to go to this gym in Ballackinwood on, it was like, all the media people go there. It's all the way like down this hill, the Aquatic and Fitness Center. Yeah. And
yes, I know where that is.
And I remember I lost a lot of weight in my mid-20s. So I started going to the gym. I would go there every morning. And when you go to the gym really early in the morning, it's the same people every time in the same exact place, whatever, in the locker room. And there was an older guy that we would always like end up getting out of the shower at the same time. And he starts talking to somebody else. This was in the locker room. And he started talking about how much he fucking hated my dad. And I started laughing. And I go, like, that's my dad. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, Howard Eskin is actually
how can he have kids?
I was like, Howard Eskin is actually my dad. And like all of the color drained out of his face. And I told him, I don't care. Like the way that you were talking about him put me through college. I don't have any college loans because of the way people feel about him. So it doesn't, I would say it bothered me more when I was younger. I think the only thing that ends up bothering me is my dad is there's a lot of levels to it, right? Like personally to people, if anybody ever asks him for help, any, rising young broadcaster asks him for help, every single person, anybody asks him for a charity thing, he will go to every single thing all the time. Right. So he has a good heart like that. Yeah. I know that he drives people crazy. So I think when people talk about him as a bad guy, that'll probably get me mad, but people hating him on the radio, he asked for that.
Yeah.
So
by the way, I've had nothing but amazing interactions with your dad. He always, went out of his way to say hello. And every time I see him, I've seen him all over the place. I saw him out at the Super Bowl. I feel like everywhere I go, I see him, and he's always willing to talk and just a great guy. So I got nothing bad to say about him. I'd say for me, I was super lucky. People always ask me like, oh, what was it like to have Ed Rendell as your dad? I'm like, well, on the spectrum of 1 to 10, if you're a politician's kid, I had to have it at like an 8 or a 9, maybe a 10, right? Because most politicians, especially these days, nobody.
It's a different world now.
Yeah, nobody's universally loved. And I was fortunate enough that by the time he had got on in his career and I was old enough to understand what was going on, everybody pretty much liked him. Now, would I hear people talk shit about him? For sure. And I would say definitely like I would feel a certain way about it, right? Because the subject matter is pretty serious, right? Like he's the freaking mayor of the city. And so if someone's talking about how he screwed over the union or something, you know what I mean? It's pretty heavy stuff. For some reason I felt always like just kind of wanted to do my own thing. I didn't want to be in the mix with that. He did his thing. I wanted to do my own thing, but it's interesting. Sports was always the common, denominator for us. And, I grew up as just an obsessive sports radio fan. Even after I got super into music, I went on tour and I was listening to nothing but music. But when I came home, it's like, I just listen to sports radio constantly. I know everybody who's on, I know the different stations, whatever. And, there's been times when I was like, I want to go into sports radio. And I think you basically convinced me at certain points, maybe not to. So, like, I think it's part of the deal. And by the way, like you said, with the college loans, I was sitting in the mayor's box eating hot dogs, you know what I mean? So I was like, this isn't so bad. I could take a couple, bad comments. And speaking of which, that brings me to another point of commonality that we had, which is the chubby face.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if can we pull up the picture?
It wasn't
that
just
we got
a face for me, man. It was like,
well, I mean, someone's going to comment that someone's going to comment that mine is still going on. Yeah. Feel free. Go ahead. But we got this picture of Spike, which is very reminiscent of, there we go. And this to me, like, I didn't.
There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, I should have put one in of myself. And honestly, man, like I can relate to this picture. I remember being in like rooms and taking pictures like Bill Clinton, and like Bill Clinton could give a crap, who I was. I'm standing there with my dad. But this just was such an epic photo.
My favorite part about this photo is it looks like MJ is pretending he's on the phone. and there's no way there's a cell phone.
It's like 1989 or
he's
something.
Definitely just like adjusting something, but it looks like
looks like Gritty's taking the picture.
Yeah, and if you're
it does, and the reflection there. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think if I remember correctly, so my dad knows World Wide West pretty well.
Yeah.
And I think it was Wes that introduced us to Jordan at that point. And it looks like maybe he's
doing
I
didn't know Wes hasn't been around that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, man. Dude, yeah. My dad knew him when he sold shoes in Jersey. Or whatever.
Was LeBron.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, no. He's been around. Yeah, Wes.
So for anyone listening, we're looking at a picture of a very young Howard Eskin with still has a great head of hair, but this beard is like a perfectly trimmed, and then Michael Jordan is on a phone call.
I had that same haircut back then with
Well, and Spike has a.
Did you have a mullet or just a tail? Because I had a tail. It was less
so
of a mullet.
I had a tail first, but then I became really into Brian Bosworth.
Okay.
So it was like long in the back like that, and then eventually I don't have it here, but eventually I had like the lines shaved in the side.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah,
man. I like it.
Is
I
that
even
what
had
inspired
used
your
to get
first tattoo, Brian Bosworth?
No. Why did I get my first tattoo? I don't know. I was 17. It was I got a Clockwork Orange tattoo. It's covered up now. But yeah, I look terrible. I mean, big fat kid with a mullet. Yeah, just really a disaster. Yeah.
Well, I was in my prime chunk phase back when my dad was like mayor. So there's a lot of old photos of me. And the worst part was I was like a little skater. So I had like the long kind of side hair thing, which isn't a good look when you're slightly overweight.
Wait,
like a chunky Tony Hawk.
And I think it was freshman
Chunky
year at Episcopal. So I started going to Episcopal in 8th grade, and they don't have gym class there. You have to play a competitive sport, which, you know, for a fat 14-year-old is not like great or whatever. So I decided I was
a badminton.
Yeah.
Is it bowling or?
Well, no. So I decided this is absolutely true. I'm going to play ice hockey. I had never ice skated before in my life, but I did rollerblade a lot. I figured it was close enough, and it is sort of close,
Sure.
except stopping is way
Yeah,
different.
but the principle.
Stopping is difficult.
So you put a fat kid in hockey gear?
Yeah.
Like I look like the kid from.
Remember the
Mighty
Nintendo
Ducks?
ice hockey where you would choose, there would be a skinny guy, like a tall guy, and a fat guy.
I was the fat guy. I was like the kid from Christmas Story. We'll put on the
Ralph.
Yeah, right. I couldn't get my arms down.
Me.
Oh, it was a disaster.
Get all your hockey gear on, then have to take a piss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mom, take it off.
Yeah, I stayed.
Wait, what year did you graduate high school?
94.
Okay, so you were before me. All right.
Yeah.
I was wondering if we ever crossed paths in the old Interact there.
Where did you go?
Penn Charter, 98.
Look
Look at us, two sons of noteworthy Philadelphians that went to private
Privileged
school.
private
Come on,
school.
man.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Who would have guessed it would have worked out for us?
And
How
to balance
feel
that
so
out.
bad if someone said something
Now,
bad.
and Spike,
Yeah.
you know, when I started this podcast, I knew that I had to make sure I covered all my bases. That's why I have the two most famous Northeast Philadelphia kids
Our
that went
Northeast
to
boys.
Catholic schools growing
By the
up.
way, I'm broke as shit, and I sent my two of my first kids to high school, private school.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where they go? Well, you know.
Holy
Well,
Ghost.
Mostly off of FanDuel winnings, so let's be honest,
Yeah.
right? That's it. Yeah, beautiful. Hey, where's our chili bets, man? Are they still rocking and rolling, dude? We gotta get
Yeah,
back with those
they're
guys.
still doing good. I'm still winning some cash with them, but we missed the Wednesday night regular season live bets. It's not the same.
I
anymore.
know. We got to get back to those.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, Spike, maybe we can get some lessons from you about how to monetize. You know what I mean? We could really use some help. Mark Goodhart was one of our sponsors, but then he became part of the podcast. So it was hard for me to ask him for money. So, sorry.
Well, all of our sponsors are listeners, every single one of them. The first one was
Mr. Draft King listens.
that it's a guy named Ethan who works for
I
DraftKings.
thought
Literally
for a
everybody.
second, I thought we're talking about WIP, and I was like, well, I mean, he has a wide reach, so I guess.
Oh no, I'm thinking of the podcast.
No,
Yeah.
that is good advice. And on that note, so I have so much to ask you about that because we started doing this 2 years ago, which is like obviously after like everyone started doing podcasts just for fun.
Yeah, we were lucky. We were earlier.
like you've been doing it now, what, 11 years? I wanna say?
11 years
Okay.
in July. Yeah.
So it's funny to me. I was thinking about this and I was like,
And I started podcasting probably 3 years before that.
right. So, and you're in radio, you see a lot of this stuff happening. So you're right on it. I was just wondering though, like, was podcasting ever cool? Cause like back then it was like, it seemed like kind of like a nerdy thing. And now it's to the point where everyone's like, cool, you have a podcast. No one cares.
Yeah, everyone has.
Like, at what point was it cool? Was there a moment there? I think there was a moment in time.
I think there was a moment. It was cool to me. I thought it was cool, honestly, that people listened.
Right,
Like
yeah.
I remember the first time I started doing the podcast with Mike. I did an Eagles podcast before that. We did a Phillies one. And then we started doing Rights to Ricky with Mike, and we did the first lottery party. So we started in July, and we did the first lottery party, whatever, that spring, 7 months later. And Mike didn't even come out. He stayed in LA, and we did it at Miller's Ale House.
I was there, Northeast.
Yeah, in the Northeast.
You were there?
Yeah, it was like 2 blocks from my house.
Yeah.
And I was at the one in Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah,
I was at the
next
Buffalo
year.
Wild.
Well, the Buffalo Wild Wings one was
That was
crazy.
That was
was
insane.
crazy.
You couldn't even get a beer.
I
for
got
like
yelled
2
at by
hours.
Meredith Morakovitz. Is
At
she there?
Buffalo Wild. Yeah, she was probably working for
I know it was a
Comcast
blonde.
Sportsnet.
I just had to remember.
Oh no, I think
she
it
yelled
was.
at me.
But I think it was Amy there.
I think I don't think Fadul would have yelled at me. I think it was Morocco.
So yeah, we went to the we wanted to have this party. We went to the Miller's Ale House, and I tried to explain to them what it was, and they had no idea. And I said maybe 50 people will come or whatever. We got T-shirts made, and they seemed bothered by the entire thing.
Yeah,
right.
So
they were understaffed.
We've done that.
Well, we were driving there, and the party didn't start until 7 or something. It's probably 5 o'clock, and they called me. And they said, "Are you coming soon?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. Why?" And they're like, "There's kids here that are waiting for it, and they want the T-shirt." And I was like, "Oh no!" And I got there, and they were way understaffed. They might have had 2 bartenders, and we probably had 200 or 300 people.
Yeah,
there.
it was a ton of people.
The whole room. And I remember getting back to my house. I lived in South Philly at the time on Rittner Street, or on 10th and Rittner, and I called Mike because I couldn't believe that there were so many people there. And I was like, I think people listen to the podcast, man. I was like, this is awesome. I felt so good after that.
Well, truthfully, when I started this, I mean, you guys are, to me at least, kind of like the blueprint. Not that there is a blueprint, but like, I just thought what you had created was so cool because it was such a real thing, you know, like it was online, but it was real. That was always my thing. Like, I always thought that the radio stations and the traditional media didn't do a good enough job of actually like meeting people where they are and getting people together and like engaging. And it was too, you know, you're up in a studio, and, you know, even the remotes leave a lot to be desired, you know? And I just thought you had the freedom to do do whatever you wanted to do. And I think that's the beauty of like the whole podcast thing, right? It kind of reminds me of the music industry when anyone can start making music, you know, because the tools to do so became available. And it's a good thing and a bad thing. Now we're like on the other side of that, where there's too much going on.
There's too much. Yeah.
But my point is, Philadelphia is a place where there is such a real, authentic, organic, you know, thing. And you guys tapped into it in a way that I just thought was so cool. And I was like, if we could even do like a small portion of that, you know, like that would be cool to me.
I was listening to the last Rights of Ricky, and the thing that really caught my attention was you were doing an LL Pavorsky ad read. I love LL. I met him
he's
a
the
bunch
greatest.
of times. He's awesome. I love his Jake's awesome. My dad used to be a jeweler right around the corner from Sansom Street, and he sold over 400 engagement rings to Ricky listeners already. That like blew my mind. I'm like, that seems like a fake fucking number, but I know how he counts them down every time.
It's a real number.
It's a real number. But that's a shitload of. That's just engagement rings within your listeners who felt that they should go to your spot. That's pretty cool.
He has been a awesome story for us, for other advertisers, really, just because like he's been there 36 years.
Yeah.
So his clientele hit a certain age where there weren't buying very much anymore, and we basically like were able to help rebuild his business. But he's able to prove that it works. And the other thing that he does that the other advertisers often do, not all of them do, but they realize like if they lean into it and they're part of it, if they come to the events and stuff like that, then people will treat them like they are like their hosts.
Yeah, it's like, a very good example of how this shit works, and how it's really awesome.
Yeah, I love Lee he begged us to advertise on the podcast, and we said no, and we didn't take money from him for a year and a half. We made him just donate to charities. We still donate the money he pays us to charities. And then some guy came to some rich kid, when the podcast thing was exploding, Doug, I forget what his last name is, offered us, I think, $80,000 for a year for him to sell the ads of the podcast, and he would have the podcast. And we said no. And when we did that, I remember calling Mike and going like, all right, if we're going to say no, we should probably sell ads to the podcast, because that's enough money for us to, and then we just started doing it. And the only way we did it was, so LL was first, Kornblau was second, who's a personal injury lawyer, a listener, just reached out to us.
Stateside.
Well, Big Barker was next. We read in Philly Mag. Now, Eric from Big Barker said that he wanted to be the next like LL Pavorsky on our podcast. So I just reached out to him, and I'm like, do you want to
this note, you got to talk to me a little bit about the Kinetic connection, because I'm friendly with Brandon John, who, you know, does Nocturnal Kinetic, and I grew up skating here, went to randomly Spike skates back in the day with my dad to get a Tony Alva. So I've been following that my whole life, and to see you guys not only having, you know, a sponsorship Kinetic, but putting out like branded gear. I was like, dude, then I was even like, you gotta be kidding me, man. Like,
well, they were a very early advertiser too. Ben is the guy I know. So Ben's brother,
Ben
is a
Kinetic
musician. Ben's brother Andrew was in Philly band, still around.
Dr. Dog.
Dr. Dog.
I got it.
Yes.
That was a ding, 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 ding.
And Ben's brother Andrew was in Dr. Dog, but he is married to Eliza Hardy Jones, who is in War on Drugs now. And she's a listener, but she gave us one of our songs that we use or whatever. So that's how we got and Ben was a listener, I guess, Ben from Kinetic. So it's just funny for us to have a skateboarding shop as a sponsor, but their gear is cool or whatever. Cool. And they sold our merch for a while. And
Meech will tell you, you know, when Meech was growing up, and he's a big sneaker guy, he was always watching the skaters, and Jimmy Garecki.
I have no idea how to skateboard, but I was always a poser. You know, I love the gear. Like, I thought they dressed the cool. Them and graffiti writers, they were the coolest dudes. Everyone else copied off of them.
I wore I got a Thrasher hoodie once, and Ben
that is poser material.
And Ben was like, that might be pushing it a little too far. That
I never acted like I skated.
So funny story. Also
50. Like, what am I doing?
Guys, one of the things that you can only get so good at when you're a chubby kid, skateboarding, because jumping and moving around, you know, when you're carrying a little extra, it's very tough. But it's funny.
Break a lot of boards.
I skated enough to, you know, get around a bit, you know, and I could skate at like parks and street spots a little bit, but I wouldn't wear a Thrasher hoodie because I was like, I can't skate well enough to wear a Thrasher hoodie, so I never wore one.
Well, I got to sell their gear, right?
Yeah. That's you have to do.
Okay, now, Spike, I wanted to ask you one of the I think it was the first time I ever heard you or heard of you was the Kid Chris show. I was a huge Kid Chris show fan. Are you still in contact with him?
I do talk to Chris occasionally.
He's in Cincinnati, right?
Yeah, he's been on the morning show on WEBN, like a legendary rock station in Cincinnati for years.
That show used to crack me the fuck up, man. Between him, Open Mike was the other. Like, there was a bunch of characters there, and it was a really funny show.
It was funny. I remember when I moved to Chicago, I left YSP, moved to Chicago, and I played them a clip from the Kid Chris show, and they were like, well, that wasn't on the air, was it? I'm like, yeah. And like, looking back on it, obviously Chris got fired here for doing something he shouldn't have done. Looking back on it, I don't know how that was on the radio. I'm glad that it didn't ruin my career. He was very funny. I loved doing it.
But back then, it was
different world.
He was a stern disciple.
Yeah.
They just all tried to put Opie and Anthony were on the air, who were, you know, just as great. And
whip them out Wednesday, baby.
They just tried to do anything they could to be controversial.
Yeah. I'll never forget. The callers used to call me gay all the time. But they would use worse words to call me gay. And they recorded, like, they would do parody songs like almost weekly about me being gay. And there was this one guy that would call up he was from Red Hill, PA.
You know how gay you have to be to do that?
Yeah.
But it was, I think it was like a stern homage. They do the same.
Yeah.
Like, were you the producer for that show?
No.
Oh,
no, I just worked there. But I got along with Chris, so I was on the show all the time. And that was like, you know, it was, I forget what year, it was like 03 or something. So calling people gay on rock radio was like, that's what you did, right? So this one guy,
My times have changed.
They have changed, thankfully, for the better. So this one guy, Red Hill Mike, he kept doing these songs about me, and I finally like snapped, and I saw him out at an event once, and I saw
like Fink. It's kind of similar vibe.
Yeah. So
let me guess. He loves you, and he's a big fan. Oh.
Well, he does. But I saw his wife, and his wife was like heavy. So I'm like, all right. So we did these parody songs all the time.
Oh no.
So I did one to Hash Pipe about Red Hill Mike. And I could see Chris would love.
Please tell me it went, I got my fat wife.
Very close. So Chris would love these moments where it was so uncomfortable in the room that like you could cut it. Yeah. And you would see him, he would hide under the console if he could feel it. So I'm singing the beginning part, like, you know, da, 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 da. And Chris knew. I didn't tell him what I was doing, but he knew, and I could see him like waiting for it. And it was like, oh, you got a fat wife. And Chris
Thank you.
like
Called it.
And Red Hill Mike never did another song about me again. So
You ruined his life.
it was like beating up the bully or whatever. I punched him right back in the face. You know?
Right off the top rope.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
On the radio, so inappropriate.
It's great.
Poor woman.
Yeah.
Did nothing wrong
Now-
to me.
No.
Yeah.
Is it true? Did you at one point consider putting Meech in some sort of show or
Yes.
something? Did I hear this?
Yeah, it was.
Because that could have changed the path of history in
So,
terms of
if I remember
sports radio in
correctly,
Philadelphia.
if I remember correctly, it was Phillies 24/7.
Yes.
So it's an HD station.
It was like
for the
February
Phillies.
2011.
We had started this HD station that was all Phillies all the time. And it was a lot of replays of games, but we had like 3 hours for original content every day. And it was you and
Zoo with Roy, right?
no.
Deech.
Yes.
Oh,
I think it was originally Zoo with Roy, and I think you didn't like it. So you asked me to find somebody else.
Oh, that's
And it was
entirely
Deech.
possible. Yeah.
So my I came to YSP or
Yeah, it was,
WIP.
no, it was
for-
YSP.
Oh
It
yeah,
was YSP at the time. Yeah.
and we did a like a sample show. I think I still have the CD somewhere in my
Please
in my
find.
old Apple computer.
Oh
If it still opens up, I definitely have the CD. And our guest on it was Todd Zalecki, because I remember
Ah, yeah.
I remember it was 2011 because
Damn.
we were talking about the Packers had just won the World Series, and it must have been spring training leading up to the 2012
come
season.
again?
Who won the World Series?
Green Bay Packers,
The
Hmm.
2011. Oh wow, Super
Yeah.
Bowl. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Why were you talking about that? I thought it was
Because
a Phillies
he's-
show.
he's from Wisconsin.
Yeah,
Mixing up the
confused.
Super Bowl and the
Uh,
World Series.
Todd Zalecki's from Green Bay, Wisconsin.
You know
so
what,
I
Meech?
that's how I remember.
So
the
funny
year.
story. I just realized we totally screwed up because
Why?
so Meech and I were friends when we were like, what how old do you think we were when we met, Meech?
13.
13.
Oh.
And we used to get into all sorts of things, you know, back in the day down the shore, Ocean City, if you can believe it,
Like
which I
what?
know is rough. Dice, rolling dice, drinking 40s, you know, Fink, come on. Meech used to rip me off in every way possible, I assure you. But I had
Just trying to get some of that Rendell money.
Yeah, damn right. Damn right.
I know who your dad is.
Shit. So 2014, I believe it was, I was just like putzing around on Twitter. I didn't even know what it was, you know, and I see this guy, Meech, you know, and I'm like, he's got this wit, you know, and I'm like,
Meech was like a Philly Twitter OG.
yeah. And I'm like,
Absolute,
I think
absolute.
this is his last name is Malichi. You may know that because you almost employed him. I'm like, I think,
you just dox him
Can't,
like that?
can't
yeah,
give that.
I think this is
I'm
Malichi.
gonna be
that.
I'm gonna be doxxed in a day
Whatever,
or two
dude.
anyway. I'm in an Inquirer article coming out. in a couple
Oh,
days.
here we go. The legend of
Oh,
Meech
look at
Gross.
you, fancy
Oh,
man.
hold on,
Yeah.
hold on,
Tell
hold on,
no-
So
hold on.
now
What's it
listen,
about?
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
let me keep going.
If
Let me
you're
keep
gonna
going.
flex, then he needs to flex. Let
So-
him flex.
At the time, you know, I said this, I think this is Malichi. So I like DM'd him on Twitter. I was like, yo, is this you? And he's like, yeah, it's me. I'm like, we should get together. He's like, I work here. And then I didn't do anything, you know, like it was years. I remember it must have been like 5 years since that message. And at the time, I was thinking like, oh, maybe because I was like representing personalities. And I was like, this is so stupid. Like I should just be doing something. Then years and years later in like 2020, maybe I hit him up and I was like, yo, I want to do a podcast with you, you know, but I just realized that was the moment we should have started it right then. You know
In
what I mean?
2020.
In 2014.
Oh, yeah.
We should have done something then.
Yes.
Meech, we screwed up.
Yeah. Well,
You screwed up. I didn't
Yeah,
know
I
what a
did screw up.
podcast was back
Yeah.
then.
Meech was also busy, I think, having number
Yeah.
4 and 5. right
Making
around there.
babies.
Yeah. When I first got him to do this, he's like, what do you want to
Maybe
do
we'll have a
with
girl.
this? He's like, what do you want to do with this? What do you want to do? I'm like, I don't know. And here he is 2 years later. He's still
I
coming back.
still don't know what we're doing.
86
I
episodes.
just show up every week.
Well, it's kind of the point. That the problem with the explosion of it is that people started. I'm not like, not just saying that everything should be like, you know, purely for joy or altruistic or whatever. But it blew up, and everybody started doing it to make money.
Right.
The point,
Like force themselves to do it
Yeah.
on something.
Right.
Instead of just doing it and
Pe-
for stuff they like.
people would always ask me, like, how do we make money on it? I was like, well, why don't you think about how to get people to listen to it first, and then you can think about like how to make money. I think doing it because you have fun with it is that was what we were scared with the Ricky, is making money. Is like, I was scared that we did it because we wanted to do it, and if we had to do it any week, which we do now. Like we could obviously stop, but we have a certain amount of ads we have to do. Luckily, I still enjoy it, but I was always terrified of having to do it, and it made me not like it anymore.
You know what the funny thing is? When I started it, I feel like I grew up so trained, like, oh, you gotta make something, you gotta build something, you know. And I certainly wanted to, not even monetarily, like I wanted to build a community, you know. And I think we've done that. Like we have a nice group of like the oaf modes of the world. Love you, oaf mode. You know, that come out to events, and I love that. But especially with social media, and I'd love to get your take on the evolution of that whole thing. But I just felt like, you know, when you're trying to drive it, you're like, we should be doing more. We got to post this. And you see all these accounts that are like doing the aggregation thing, right?
Yeah.
So they're pulling. And I was like, you know what? Like, okay, maybe this isn't growing as fast as I want, but like, if we just post our own shit, you know, it's only like, I'll just post a clip a couple times a week, and then we'll talk about whatever we're doing. And I don't post like whatever, you know, all the other outlets are posting. Like, that's okay. Like, we're not spamming people's feeds with a bunch of bullshit. Then maybe that's okay. You know, it's not the best strategy to grow. Right. But like,
well, but a lot of those accounts that aggregate, that's all they're like. I don't know what it's a means to an end to. They can grow the account, but if any of those aggregator accounts were to put out their own product, nobody would consume it. All they're doing, they're just like a utility. They're not I don't think anybody's entertained by any of that stuff.
Well, it's funny. There's an account, NBA Central.
Yes.
I'm not even sure what it's connected to. Like, what is it?
It's
one guy. Is it a Dove Kleiman type deal?
Yeah, it's just a.
I realize that we have not.
Growth is not actually real. If you actually were able to look behind the X number of followers, it's all like other bots and other things, and it's not even like real people.
Stream farm.
And no one's even actually paying attention, but it gives you this sense of like, how this person get 50,000 followers.
Don't they look good with that? Like, it's darker over there.
Oh,
somehow.
They do. That does
nice.
It's
a good look.
Mood lighting over here.
You guys are in like the chill zone.
It's odd that it's dark here because there's a bright light shining in my eyes.
Conan.
What's that?
I'm so old that I remember hearing him say that and being like, man, that's going to be so far away. And now it's 24 years since that actually made sense. And by the way,
they actually look like they're in a bachelor apartment's kitchen.
How are you guys doing over there, by the way? I realize
a lot of the comedians will bring that up in their bits.
Will
like,
they?
I know a residential refrigerator when I see one. They're like, somebody lives here.
Yeah.
Listen,
except there's no shower.
Right.
We pieced it together, man.
It does look good that way.
Yeah, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Their vibe is better than ours.
You just grind it up too much.
We have fluorescent
They
light
need to put the
vibe.
Good Heart Firm neon on. They really slept on that.
Okay, so on the note of the podcast, Spike, I feel compelled to ask you because, look, you're probably sick of it, but there's nothing you can do.
What's this going to be?
The process, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Here's what I need to understand.
Okay.
Obviously, you didn't have anything to do with the Sixers' strategy of deciding they were going to intentionally lose.
Correct.
But
yeah,
how responsible do you feel, honestly, in creating the cultural phenomenon that became the process in Philadelphia?
Oh, I mean, we are
very culpable.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I don't think.
I just want to make sure.
I don't know that somebody else. It very likely, if we weren't there, somebody else could have been there and done the same exact thing. Well, it's possible, right? But I don't think. I remember when Sam got fired, feeling like we had caused it a little bit. That if we hadn't drawn so much attention to what it was and turned it into like this like us versus them thing, which was good for us, and I think it was good for fans, but I think it was bad for him because like so he worked at Bain. He was like a private equity guy, and that's what he does now. He runs a fund, like so
I'm sorry,
but most of what those guys do when they strip down companies and blah, blah, they do it in silence. Nobody cares. Like they buy a company, they strip it down, they fix it, whatever. And I think that's what he was doing. And I don't think he was used to doing something like that. The idea of doing something that publicly was a problem.
So here's the follow-up question,
So it's
because
us.
I would obviously,
So yes, it was all us.
no, but you guys were clearly responsible in the Philadelphia-centric cultural phenomenon that occurred.
Yeah.
But here's the question I have. How was that, like, how could you perceive how the Sixers organization felt about it? Because my outside in look is that they were probably at the time uncomfortable with a non-traditional media outlet growing in popularity. And this is before. Now people seem to embrace all that, right? But then it seemed to be scary and illegitimate, and they can't let you do stuff. They don't let you ring the bell, like blah, blah.
So there's like 3 parts of it. The first part is they were supportive because nobody else was supporting them. So when we would do road trips and stuff, this was before they fired Sam. They would send like the dance team out and see us off or whatever. And I remember telling the PR person at the time, who now works for the Pacers, Mike Preston, I said, Mike, we're great now, but just understand that like all of this could turn on a dime. And he laughed. And then they fired Hinkie.
And it all turned on.
And we took out a billboard outside of the Wells Fargo Center that said Hinkie forever.
Legendary.
And that made Scott O'Neill really mad at us. And I remember he texted me and he said, if you'd like to know the real story, let me know. And I said, that's your story. And that was it for him for a while. And I think there was an animosity after that. But I would say, I'll give credit, I'll just name check them. Dave Schaller, who is president of, communications or whatever. And
don't know him, but he seems like a good dude.
He worked for UFC for a while, and he does Devils too. And I guess he does Washington, the football team too. He has been very understanding and supportive. Rob King over there has been understanding and supportive. And then once Scott O'Neill was gone and Chris Heck was gone, all those guys were gone. And Maury came in. Maury had been on our podcast when he worked for the Rockets.
This is crazy.
So, and then a new CEO came in, and they have been supportive, I would say. And do
you think they tried to prevent Daryl from coming on your show at all, or don't they have that authority? Or there was no.
They always line it up when Daryl, like when we ask Daryl to come on, and they've reached out before and said, hey, this is normally when Daryl comes on. So I think they understand the value of it. And they mostly leave us alone. I would be lying if I said that when we say one thing, they won't every once in a while reach out and go, this is really how it is. And I'll be like, yeah, right, whatever. But even Daryl and Dave, when they say their side of something and I say, I don't think that's right, here's what I think, they're fine.
Yeah.
And we're much better if you don't push against us. We did a road trip to the Wizards once, and we had 500 people. And I guess they found out who we were. My brother-in-law, Joe, runs Fans of Philly. They do road trips, so they do all.
That's your brother-in-law?
Yeah,
yeah. We went out to LA. He's awesome.
Yeah, he's the greatest.
They were a sponsor of the program for a little bit there.
Fans of Philly. Yeah.
Now they're WIP. I mean, get it. There's levels to this. But it's fine.
What? Yeah,
we love Joe.
Yeah, Joe's the best. So
we let them get their feet wet.
Yeah, well, they're
doing great.
I'm very proud of him. Like, he was an accountant for Urban Outfitters for a while and was doing we just do bus trips down to DC for the Phillies. And then he quit it and made it his whole job. What was I saying? Oh, so he does our road trips. We do one a year. So we're doing one to Washington, and Joe calls me and he's like, they're either going to cancel the tickets, or we weren't going to be allowed to wear our T-shirts there, or we weren't going to be allowed to wear any Sixers gear when we took the picture on the court afterwards. And at the time, I was working for WIP, and I said, get me whoever's reaching out to you. And we had a call with their VP of marketing or something. And I said, the first thing I want you to know is I'm not like some idiot. I work for a major radio station. I deal with teams all the time. I said, the second thing I want you to know is that if you do what you're saying you're doing, it is going to be a lot worse for you than if you just let us take a fucking picture on the floor. We behave, we don't start fights, anything like that. You start telling us that we can't go or we can't wear Sixer stuff, we're going to tell everyone. And they let us. So
what was the team last year? Was it Dallas?
Dallas.
They told you that you weren't allowed to come there?
So Dallas wouldn't sell us tickets. The Mavericks wouldn't sell us tickets. The Timberwolves wouldn't sell us tickets. We eventually found their VP of ticket sales was actually from Philly. And the reason he wouldn't sell us tickets is
he got fired.
He was worried. So we said, we will promise not to boo, and we will donate $10,000 to your like charity fund or whatever. And thanks to Joe, we did it.
That's awesome.
So, and they sold us tickets, and we're behaved. We're not like Eagles fans, God bless them. Like we show up and we're just weird. We don't start fights with anyone. The Clippers were very nice. We went to LA this year and they were cool.
Now,
they were helpful.
I've never been to one of the road trips, but was the coolest thing that ever happened was Brett Brown buying an entire section beer. Was that the coolest thing?
So Brett brought us beers at the kickoff to it once, like when we left, and Scott O'Neill accidentally bought us beers when we were in Milwaukee. So
unknowingly, or
dude, it was so good. So we're in Milwaukee. It's a nationally televised game, and we're very loud. And the Sixers ended up losing, but they started really well. So we're going crazy. Everyone's like looking at this. And Scott O'Neill tweets, a ton of Sixers fans there. We're going to buy them all beers and pretzels. And I started laughing.
He didn't know it was you guys.
No. And I just responded back to him, hey, Scott, it's us. And I know it rushed him. It must have really crushed him.
It's great.
Brett brought us beers once. And the coolest thing actually was 2 years ago, we went to San Antonio.
He came back out on the
floor.
floor.
I asked Brett, I said, if we come to San Antonio, will you say hi to everyone? He was like, I would love to. And after the game, he came and he spoke to everybody.
Amazing.
And it was really cool. We've had a lot of cool.
Now thinking back, I kind of wish he would have just stayed here. Like, do you have the same
feeling? I
feeling?
miss him so much.
Like, I just loved his after game press conferences between his
so sincere
and his humor.
Yeah.
And he was so sincere.
Yeah.
I wish, and I remember him. It was so pathetic. He was doing a post game press conference, and it was when Ben Simmons just wouldn't shoot, and he was pleading through Ben Simmons' agent.
Won a game.
Yeah. He's like, please just convince him to shoot. He's like, I'm trying to do it and he won't do it. Can you please just tell him to shoot one a game?
One game.
That's when I was like, he lost. Like, they're going to choose Ben over him. I felt bad for the guy.
Yeah, he's doing great.
He had that like Larry Brown sincerity to him. Just like a real,
he was really.
Except Larry Brown was kind of a dickhead.
Yeah, Except Brett's, Brett's
actually a genuine dude.
We when he got the job in San Antonio, he hadn't done any media, and he came on the Ricky for like an hour right after he got the San Antonio job, and he was he's the best, man. I love him. I miss him. I miss him here a lot.
Good news for you. The Phillies game looks like it's going to hell in the
handbasket. 6-4.
Yeah, so maybe there'll be something to talk about tomorrow. I don't know.
It's hard to yell about baseball.
Right. Yeah. Now, on that note,
you
guys are doing we're going to transition a little here to the actual show you're doing now because everybody listens.
Yeah. Hopefully.
This is Mount Rushmore week.
Yeah.
And I know that some people here had some ideas for different Mount Rushmores.
We all put together in honor of Mount Rushmore week.
Okay.
We all put together.
Yeah, we got 3 days left, which is 4 a day. No, 2 days left. 8. So that's 8.
I think you'll use mine.
Okay.
That sounds good.
You're going to use yours? All right, let me start, though, because this is our common ground. So I wanted to see what you thought. You may have done this. If you have, my apologies. What about 90s rock band? Like, you and I think have some common ground in there. We might choose some bands that are maybe a little bit less known, but if I had to go,
but it's Mount Rushmore.
It's Mount Rushmore, so you can't do that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking more like kind of the grunge zone.
So
and
it's hard to do music ones for me on the show because Jack is like 9 years old and Ike hasn't.
Right.
Like
but
I can do hip hop.
We're right here.
Now. All right.
So
90s.
I was thinking, let me just give you a couple, right? You're going to have to put Nirvana on there. We know that. For me, a lot of people are going to want to put Pearl Jam on there, but I'm not a huge Pearl Jam guy somehow. I would understand. But for me, I'm going to put Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, Alice in Chains, and then I'm actually thinking about, I know this is going to be controversial because they kind of turned into a bit of a pop band, but I was thinking like Chili Peppers. I mean, I love Smashing Pumpkins. I would put them in there.
Pumpkins, yes.
Well, it's hard. It's hard.
What would you say?
Well, I would say it's hard to do a Mount Rushmore of 90s rock.
To leave Metallica.
There's too much.
Yeah, well,
like grunge is obvious, right? It's Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains.
Right.
That's what goes on there. And then you could do the non-grunge alt, which would be STP, Chili Peppers.
I see what you're doing.
Smashing Pumpkins.
Right.
What's that?
Candlebox. Get out of here with that.
So
stop.
They're not on it. They're not on it. But Brian, my friend,
he had to go all caps.
My friend is the guitar player in Candlebox now from Philadelphia.
Oh,
that Shine? Was that Shine?
What's
Or was
that?
Where did they have Shine?
No, Candlebox is far behind.
Who had Shine?
Collective Soul.
See, that's the next level stuff. I would put emo founders. You know, we have to go Sunny Day realistic, but we'll get into that differently.
Yeah, emo would be a different.
No one's gonna understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's mine. Not that cool. Meech, what do you got, dude? Meld everyone's faces here.
It's very innovative. Mine is the Mount Rushmore of national monuments.
Okay.
Number 1 is Mount Rushmore.
The first Mount Rushmore that Mount Rushmore has ever been on.
So if you have Mount Rushmore, the very first face is all 4 Mount Rushmore faces.
Yep.
It is innovative.
Wow.
Then number 2, we're going Lincoln Monument.
Okay.
Number 3, I don't know how you're going to represent this in the Mount Rushmore, but it's Grand Canyon. You just have to put a big
It's
giant
not a
divot.
monument.
Yeah, it's not a
It's
monument.
a natural thing.
All right, then
Yeah.
we'll replace Grand Canyon with the Liberty Bell.
Okay.
I mean, with a
Homer pick.
Lincoln Memorial, and then the last one's the Liberty Bell.
So Mount
Lincoln
Mount
Memorial
Rushmore.
I don't think that
twice.
made sense.
How
Can
much
we-
do you
can
love
we-
the Lincoln Memorial?
Statue of Liberty, Lincoln Memorial, Grand
You didn't say Statue of
Mount
Liberty.
Rushmore, and
There you go.
Liberty Bell.
I got one.
There's 4.
National parks. The Grand Canyon. What's the Grand Canyon in Yosemite? No.
Yeah.
Meech. I'm not as impressed. I liked the Mount Rushmore. All Mount
On
Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore.
That was,
made it
that
for
was
me.
the whole joke.
Okay.
The rest were fucking.
Yeah.
Who gives
Okay.
a shit?
This was actually Fink's. Fink recommended that we do this.
That's my idea.
Yeah. So Fink.
That's why this is going so well. For
Yeah,
me.
Yeah.
exactly. All right, Fink. What do you have?
So
bud?
I know Meech thinks his is going to be used on the air.
Don't
but I
say
think mine's
hoagies.
A little bit better.
I can't
Okay.
do huggies.
Jake Gyllenhaal movies.
Oh, okay.
His name's Gyllenhaal.
It is Gyllenhaal.
Gyllenhaal.
Fink talks. Listen, that's one thing that's a rule here. Fink talks how Fink wants to
Gyllenhaal.
talk. Go ahead, Fink.
Gyllenhaal.
I love it.
Donnie
David
Darko.
Cook. I don't have that on there.
Oh,
Oh man, here we go. So I got
okay.
Zodiac,
Okay.
Nightcrawler.
I
Yeah.
haven't seen either of those.
What?
Keep going.
Jarhead,
Yeah.
and
Maybe.
then
I like
End
horror
of
movies.
Watch.
I don't know.
So Nightcrawler, I loved.
That's like one of my favorites.
I don't think it holds up well on multiple watches. I don't know if you've watched it again.
I have. I
What's
kinda
the
agree with
one?
that.
watches.
Wait a minute. What's the one where he?
Look at Dev.
Oh. What is the one where he meets a guy that is exactly the same as him with the spider at the end?
I'm so out
Enemy.
of these movies.
Enemy.
Yes.
Enemy's
That was-
very good. I think you had
It's a
to.
slow burn.
I think you got to get Donnie Darko on there though, don't you?
I just put End of Watch in there because that's I
I
cried. during
it's a good movie.
At the
for
end.
End of Watch.
So like that's the only movie that ever made me
I'm
cry.
a huge.
Yeah,
movie.
it was just
Can I just tell you?
What
I'm a-
about Maggie Gyllenhaal movies? Secretary.
we could
Also
go down
Donnie
a
Darko.
big rabbit hole here.
well. Devin, can
Okay.
you please stop bullying me on
The
here?
Batman
Yeah.
one that she was in.
Yeah, which Batman was she? She wasn't
the
Batman
Heath
and
Ledger
Robin,
one.
was she?
The Heath Ledger
Okay.
one, because all I can remember.
Did you
from
have
that
any other
movie-
ones, Fink? Or was that anyone else? Did
Anyone
you guys
else?
have
I
any?
told
Mount
everyone
Rushmore?
I had to do.
They didn't
do
do their
Mount
homework.
Rushmore. I did
Did you guys
mine.
do your homework?
They didn't read that text.
I did
Tom.
half my homework.
All right.
What
What's
the hell,
Tom's?
Mark?
Okay, let's go. Click, tap in.
What the heck?
I have the Mount Rushmore of the process years.
Oh,
Mount Rushmore. Okay.
JoJo,
Oh, Mount players. Okay.
figures,
Yep. Oh, okay.
Hinky,
Yep.
JoJo, Ben, and Pablo Torre for writing that story and bringing all the light to it. 'Cause until that, nobody's paying attention.
It's true.
wow.
I believe Pablo has stolen a bunch of our shine over the years, but that is fine because I love Pablo. Pablo married a couple at one of our lottery parties.
Seriously.
Yeah, I still get the emails reminding him to renew his. So, Joel, Sam, Ben, and
Do you,
what,
I had
what was the
Pablo, you-
fourth one?
Ricky
That was the fourth.
Sanchez.
No, Pablo. Pablo,
yeah.
that's who you had. Okay, that's fair. I think Pablo.
False.
Putting Pablo on there. That's a lot of credit for Pablo.
Dario Sarge.
Well, you could
Well,
do
who
a
else?
players one.
Yo, here's
Yeah.
how Pablo should win, because I don't even know the fucking story you're referring.
So he wrote one in. It was the one where Tony Roten said, like that's where
That's
trust the
where he
process
named it the
came from.
process.
Yeah,
Maybe
he
Tony
did.
Roten should be.
Yeah,
That's
well,
what they-
as,
Yeah,
as-
maybe you
He's
should-
banking it.
as players, we would certainly have Roten. Well, that's a good
Ish
one
Smith
too.
would be another.
Ish. You could do 10. of players.
All right. Well, we're almost out of time in this regulated program.
Okay.
Just kidding. We could go all night if we wanted to, but I had a couple things that I wanted to get from you.
just skip
more Mount Rushmores. You said you didn't have it.
What? I said I did half my homework.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have 2 of.
Sorry,
It feels really basic now.
Okay, well, what is
I
it?
just didn't.
Well, if it's
predict
bad, then maybe
think
skip
It
it.
can't be worse than mine, dude. Just shoot.
can't believe think when Jake Gyllenhaal movies. I mean, I'm like,
But I do like
Gyllenhaal.
Jake Gyllenhaal, so that's
So,
okay.
mine feels basic, but it came from the Phillies.
Bob Marley
playing
songs
at-
or
Bob Marley songs would actually that would be a good one
okay.
for me.
What is it?
I was going baseball stadiums, but
Okay.
not
That's okay.
always current ones. So
Oh.
I've got because
there's
we've got
two-
Fenway
gonna go
Park,
like
and then
Connie
no
Mack,
particular
or-
order. Fenway Park, the old Yankee Stadium,
Okay.
Vet Stadium.
For what?
It's just like it's where
Being
I grew up. I just
absolute
love the
trash?
Stadium. It was but it was our trash, and I just loved
Yeah,
it.
It's fair.
And
yes.
great memories, and that's where the '93 Phils played, and I just love it.
Sure.
I was in favor of them actually putting in natural grass and keeping the vet when they tore it down.
That's a horrible,
Terrible.
recommendation. Please.
PNC Park
Yeah.
and Pac Bell Park. Although
Now
I
you
know
have
it's
five.
called
Yeah,
that.
But you have
pretty sure
five.
5. See, Spike has to explain this to people all day long. You
Yeah.
don't get 5.
My favorite was when a guy said, "Here's my top 5 Mount Rushmore." And I'm like, no. There's only 4 faces
Oh, you
on
only
Mount
get
Rushmore.
4. So throw out Pac Bell.
All right, I was going to be honest. Mine was the best.
Yours. I mean, yours was deep.
I mean, no one else.
Let me ask you, when you're sculpting on Mount Rushmore, what are you putting in there? The movie
Sculpted that
box?
northeast
four
Caesar.
Or
Just his
His
face.
face
face
four times.
four
That
different
character.
times?
Yeah, from each character from each movie.
doesn't he look the same in each movie?
No.
No?
And the watch
okay.
has his head shaped.
By the way, I didn't like Fenway. I like Wrigley much better than Fenway. I don't know if you ever went to Wrigley.
I've been to
Wrigley
Wrigley.
Hall.
I do love. You know what? I do love the.
Actually, my buddy Bry is watching this. 6 years ago this week, me and my 3 friends went to Wrigley as adults. We were 38 years old, I think at the time, 39. We got kicked out in the 3rd inning.
Wow.
For what?
My buddy was being so obnoxious. I could actually I taped him being obnoxious, but it probably wouldn't be suitable area.
I'll tell you, I do love Wrigley, and it would be there, but I'm still angry at them for blocking the houses.
We went
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
We
yeah.
went
That
back
was
the
so
next day and sat in the bleachers. But
That's a
that
good
night
comment.
we got the Ferris Bueller seats that he sat on the,
yeah.
the baseline, and we got kicked out in the 3rd inning.
Well, you can't hold that against Wrigley. You know what I mean? It's not like the
No, it
field
wasn't
did that to
Wrigley's
you.
fault. It was definitely my buddy Bry's fault.
And
Okay.
No one
people in the
else's fault.
Midwest are not like ready for. We are different. I lived in Chicago for a couple of years. We're
Right.
way more annoying than
Yeah.
they are. Yeah.
So you spent a lot of time in rock radio all across the country, and I know I've seen the pictures to prove it. You've met lots of different rock stars, and I just wanted to ask, just in case, well, like, what was your best rock star encounter scenario? Because I'm guessing you have to have like at least 1 or 2 good ones where things got a little weird,
Great
or something
question.
like
Great
that.
ending question.
Yeah.
Josh.
It's either that or your best Howard Eskin story that nobody knows about. You get to choose, but prefer the rock star if you
The
can.
former.
Meanwhile, a woman I know, and I won't name her, but she texted me today and said that she was Mick Jagger's local guide for the past couple days and was literally showing Mick Jagger around Philadelphia. Were you at a show
I was at the show last night.
last night? 80
Unbelievable.
years old.
80 years
This guy's
old.
80 years old.
Unbelievable.
Freaking
No matter
dancing
what you
around.
think of their music.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I got it all.
Incredible.
Yeah, are you serious?
It's just
Mick
unbelievable.
Jagger is freaking legend. But anyway, she was showing Mick Jagger around. How cool is
Was it
that?
the same lady that was helping Lenny Dykstra out and around?
It was not the same. Lenny Dykstra.
Lenny's something else, man.
Yeah.
Where'd
Rock-
they
That
go?
guy is insane.
That's why Rock isn't here, by the way. We didn't acknowledge the fact that Rock isn't here. He's driving Lenny Dykstra tonight, so he's busy.
I'm excited for that.
You want to know something funny? You know where Rock is? He's in Georgia.
Yep.
The country of Georgia. Why? I have no idea, but he's in the country of Georgia. So when he comes back, he'll
Vacation.
have a new nickname, Rocky Georgia something, and he's going to give us a report on the country of Georgia. All right. It sounds like you
Isn't
mentioned
Georgia like Russia?
Yeah, I think it's part
It
of
is
what.
not. I
Okay.
looked actually
Like
when I
they're
saw that he
neighbors.
went
They
to
are
Georgia.
neighbors.
I was like,
Okay.
wait, where is Georgia?
I thought it was like Russia.
It's next to Turkey. It's near Russia. But
Okay.
Well, it's part of
I
the
assume they're
Soviet
gonna go
Union?
into Turkey as well.
Was it part of the USSR? Probably,
I
right?
didn't dive that deep.
Very hard to tell.
By the way, just before
okay.
Spike answers the question, Jesse,
Yeah.
any tips on where she took Mick Jagger while he was in town?
Oh, I didn't get anything beyond I was Mick Jagger's local guide for the past couple of days. That's all I
Okay.
got.
They
Wow,
went to. They
Phil's,
came to
what the hell?
Finks today.
They went-
8-4
they
Red
went to
Sox.
the Betsy Ross
That's
show.
why we shut down the store today because
They went to Finks?
Yeah,
They should have.
red
Got it.
carpet came out and everything.
Understood. Mick Jagger does
they
not.
shut down Love Brewery. Maybe
Just
he's
like the
over
one
there.
we have.
Mick Jagger does
You'll
not
find
strike
it
me
out.
as someone who's eating a lot of hoagies. Okay, we got to get Spike out of here. Oh, by the way, are you still going to Jersey
I am.
tonight? How
Yep.
long is it going to take you? Hour and a half right now?
Hour
No
20.
traffic.
Takes me about an hour.
You probably don't
20.
mind waiting a little bit because you just.
It's not bad. It's a lot of people. Jack drives from Westchester every day.
Yeah, it's probably
and
not
that's
too
fucking
dissimilar.
murder.
Yeah,
You know.
20 like right now at 9.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 80. I live
You're pretty far
84
up there.
miles away
Okay.
because I was working in New York and
By the
we
way,
haven't
Tell me
moved
the
down yet.
truth in 1 to 2 minutes max. Did you hate working in New York? Like
No,
you liked it?
I
Like commuting in from Jersey?
no.
The fan is also.
I
You ride
love
the train.
I loved working at the Fan. I loved everyone that I worked with at the Fan. I love the experience. New York is something that you should either be in or out of the experience. And we lived in Jersey suburbs. So my experience with New York was basically like going through the Holland Tunnel, going to our building on Hudson Street, and then thinking about going home through the Holland Tunnel. And so I didn't really get to experience New York the way I would have
hate those
experienced
tunnels,
New
man.
York if I was 30 and we
Right.
lived in the city or
Right.
something, but we didn't. And I remember the first month I was there, my predecessor told me he would drive to work early, like 4:35 in the morning. I get up early, but I was like, why are you driving in that early? And he's like, oh, you'll see. All right. So first month I'm driving, I'm going in at like 7 a.m. It's fine. It takes me like 50 minutes or something. Okay, whatever. But then Labor Day happens. I started in July. Then Labor Day happens. After Labor Day, I would leave at 7 in the
Everybody's
morning.
back from the Hamptons.
Dude, I would get there 8:30, 8:40 to go 17 miles. And then the same thing to go home. And in about a month, I told my wife, Val, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to make it. Like, I don't think I can do this anymore. So I started going to work at 5 a.m. So it would take me 29 minutes at 5 a.m. And it would take me an
Take
hour and a
rest
half.
there.
Yeah.
Can I tell you?
So I didn't like the experience of working in New York City, but I like.
I'm with you in the
work
in or out thing. Not everybody knows this. So my father's actually from Manhattan,
with.
and my grandmother used to live there.
Yes.
And
So he's a
boo,
fraud.
boo.
Yeah.
He might be. Whatever.
I'm sorry, I couldn't
There's
let
a whole
that go.
nother episode.
I feel like he's.
Sorry,
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
I feel like he's earned his stripes.
Booing the goat.
I feel like he's earned his stripes. So if you
Who
want to
knew
get
the
into that,
Gov
we can.
isn't a Philly guy.
Yeah. So my grandmother lived there, and she lived.
Serious topics, dude.
Yeah.
My grandmother lived in an apartment at the end of a dark hallway on 70-something street. We used to sit and drive up there and sit in the traffic of the Lincoln Tunnel. I hated it. Then when I went there after my college, my friends were all living there. I was like, oh, this isn't so bad. I could get down with
Yeah.
this. But I can't imagine working there like as
Bro.
an adult.
And the Lincoln Tunnel. All right, last thing I could
Let's
do.
get into
I
it.
could do fucked up New York forever. They close, so they do. They've been doing construction in the Holland Tunnel for years now, but now they switched it. So instead of closing it going in at a certain time,
This is what you care about, people.
at 11 o'clock at night, they closed the Holland Tunnel going out. So everyone has to go through the Lincoln Tunnel. And we went to see John Mayer at Madison Square Garden. I forgot about this. And I get in my car and I'm like, Holland Tunnel's closed. What? And 6 lanes of traffic going into one Lincoln Tunnel. I almost left my car in the middle of it because I couldn't take it anymore. So I love New York. I love the people. I love the people I worked with. in
Okay.
New York
Did
City.
you
I didn't
remember a good story of a rock star encounter? Because it looked like you maybe had a light bulb moment there.
Yeah, I know I'm going to remember more when I go home. I would say that 2 quick ones are
You could always email.
Yeah. Do you want to send somebody
Yeah.
an email?
Zach Wilde, who played with Ozzy, Black Label Society, is a fucking lunatic, and insisted that you drink and you could not leave whenever you were out somewhere. And when he drank so much once, he pissed himself and he was covered in piss at the YSP studios. I'll never forget when he got there that night. He doesn't drink anymore. When he got there that day,
Like this is during the day.
he got there during the day, drunk, got into the lobby, and I go out into the lobby at YSP, and he goes, Spike, does everyone here know how gay he is? And I'm like,
Are you sure it wasn't the guy, Red Fred?
yeah, Red Home Mike.
Listen to Kid Chris.
Yeah, and I'm like, what is going on here? So there's that. He was always very funny, though. He went bowling with listeners once. He was with us. He was very, okay, 2 more now. I'm remembering them.
Let's go.
One, when I finally met Metallica, it was post rehab James Hetfield, so he's way
Were
different.
Lars's balls hanging out his shorts? Or
He
no,
was.
that was
He
different.
was cool. It was him. It was Trujillo era, and I met Hetfield, and everyone else shook hands, smiled, went away. Hetfield, every person he met, including me, he would look you dead in the eyes and go, "Hey man, what's your name?" And then he'd be like, "So, like, what's your story? Why are you here?" And I'm just like, "I just want you to shake my hand, take a picture, and move on. I actually don't have anything to say to you,
You're not going to remember any of this, James Hetfield.
Yeah. And then once we did, this was a bad idea. I've had a lot of good ideas, but a lot of bad ones too. We did when Papa Roach came through with a meet and we had a meet and greet with them. They were playing Ozfest, and Cheerleaders was like a regular advertiser. And I think it was my idea, whoever's idea it was, the idea was to do the meet and greet with Papa Roach at the strip club. And the promotion was called Tatas with Papa. Let me tell you,
Brilliant.
meeting the band at the strip club is pretty weird. No one's having a good time. Like nobody wanted, like it was one of the more awkward situations. So that's all.
Awesome. That's a bad place for a meet and greet.
Yes, it was horrible. Dave Mustaine from Megadeth was a jerk. Il Nino offered me weed once. I wish I took it because it would have been a funny story. I guess I have a lot of them the more I think about it.
All right. Well, we had I just realized.
Yeah,
we're done.
Yeah,
we had a bunch of guests on, like, and we're starting to circle them back. Like Pat Gallen, guys, he's going to come back and see us.
Before I did the Ricky, Pat and I had a podcast for like 6 months. That was at my first 6 years.
My point is, we'll give you some time.
Okay, and then you'll ask again.
Then you come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you let Pat know that this is their last year until they stop denying the Pigeons our credentials for this NRG flag football?
Are you familiar with this? The media flag football game that went on?
I see a bunch of bums out there.
Oh, with did the Eagles put it on, or does NRG put it on? Who put?
I think it's with the Eagles.
Oh, it's at the NovaCare.
Yeah, it's at NovaCare.
Each
Deb was
team
there.
represents a different charity, I believe, and the winning team gets the bulk of the charity.
keep
A bunch of bums except
They keep rejecting. Well, minus Devin.
Scored a touchdown today.
They keep rejecting the.
I saw the
Pigeons'
highlight of
credentials.
Devin's touchdown. It was pretty.
I wish he had a better
Like
I wish he had a better celebration, but we'll let it go.
like LaDainian Tomlinson out there.
All right.
Shout out Breland, broke her ankle.
This is this is just like the Sixers
Wait, but before we
recognizing.
go, I gotta ask a Sixers question too.
Okay.
What is your dream Sixers all season?
Paul
Are
George.
you allowed to do this or
Sounds
Yeah, but there's no. I mean, I hope they.
He doesn't want Bron.
No, I hope they sign Paul George. But
do you want Paul George?
Yeah, sure. I mean, he's the best of the
it's for
available.
money? You save all
What
your
do you-
Sure.
assets.
Yeah.
What do you think about? I might just ask you this off the air, but what are the chances of getting Cade Cunningham? Is it zero?
Zero.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know why somebody floated it.
Yeah,
to
I've
us,
seen it.
and
Like why would he be available?
I think what happened is the internet will do this sometimes. A listener called up, we played a voicemail of a guy asking about Cade Cunningham. We answered the question. We put out a clip about with me playing the voicemail and us answering him. Somehow that became people thinking that Cade Cunningham
The AJ
could be
Brown
available.
trade.
Like
Just
that,
like the
just
AJ
like the
Brown
RJ
trade,
Brown
just like
trade.
that.
Yeah, we're just talking.
One of the WIP callers, Euro John.
Yeah, he called today.
Um,
I lost
heard
it
that
on
today.
him.
That was pretty
He-
good.
Dude,
That
I
was
was
good.
so mad.
he's the one who got me into this Embiid for Sabonis, Keegan Murray, and 3 first-round picks. Deal.
Oh,
I
Mitch
would- I would
Mitch
love that.
suggested this
Like,
last week.
Sabonis is terrible.
He's terrible, but he
Thank
played
you.
82 games and he led the league in rebounds.
Great. You can't play him in the playoff. I'm sorry.
You can, but
Wow.
you just have to have good guards.
Do you think Sabonis is better than Embiid, Mitch?
No,
Then why would you trade Embiid away for him? That makes no
because he
sense.
can't play in the playoff.
You don't know. Yes, he
He's
can.
never healthy. All right. Spike, it was nice having you on, my man.
It's good to see you, Beach.
Hey,
Good to see you.
Thanks,
Jesse.
dude.
The
And you're
bonus
welcome.
and Keegan
Thanks.
Murray for Embiid.
thanks,
Yeah.
thanks. Off the schneid. I think we're okay. Everybody's good. We had nice, good
What, with
relations
him?
tonight.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Everything's fine. Yeah.
I'm fine.
Okay. Yeah.
Just making sure that you
Yeah.
guys are good. Okay.
Well,
Well,
Meach and Fink are going to get in a fight right now. Instead.
Well, he suggested Sabonis for Keegan Murray and
The bead first.
Embiid
But
for
yeah.
Sabonis
the
and
battle for the
Keegan Murray. Mitch is going
Northeast.
to kill me tonight.
All right, Fink. Well, on that note, go ahead and cue the song. And everybody, we'll see you next week. Not sure what we're going to do yet.
Bye.
Thank you to Spike. Thank you to everybody tuned in. And
It's going to be so awkward. 'cause I'm not-
everybody have a great week. Summer, baby. Let's go.
It's our longest episode.